welcome to yet another episode of the Disruption Talks, where we invite top experts to discuss digital acceleration, winning strategies, innovation, and scaling products. Today, key topic will be the CTO Playbook, leading large engineering teams through change. My name is Barbara Rybicka. I am consulting director here at Netguru. And today, let me warmly welcome our guest, the CTO at AirHelp, which is a claims management company that enforces air passenger rights in cases of flight disruptions globally, Tim Boisvert. Hello, Tim. How are you today?
Hi. Going great so far, yeah. Just a sunny morning, yeah. Nice day and a nice coffee.
Good. Perfect. So, Tim, since today we're discussing the CTO Playbook and we're going to indulge into the topic of leading engineering teams, I just wanted to kick us off with a very introductory, let's say, question and ask about your leadership philosophy and why does it look the way it looks?
I mean, I have many leadership philosophies, right? Because I think all leaders do kind of end up having their kind of building blocks that they build on. I think for me, mostly, I would say it really comes down to putting people first and treating people like adults. Those are kind of the two cornerstones of my personal philosophy. And so many things kind of branch off of that. Recognizing that this isn't like a hierarchical, like it's not the military in general. And there has to be a foundation of respect for people and the fact that they've made a choice to be here, working with you, and then giving them, the information that they need, letting them make choices, letting them have ownership over things, and trying to maximize their ability to be adults and do the things they're trying to do. Stay out of their way. So
perfect. Well, that sounds like a dream company to work for. Definitely with all that foundations, I would say. And where does your philosophy come from? Do you have some specific experiences of examples that you just gave that you're trying to follow?
Well, I think no specific examples. I think a lot of it just comes from being an individual contributor myself for so much of my career, and why I got into management was because I wanted to perhaps reflect that adulthood a little bit more. And so no, I think I got into management and started developing my philosophy around management and leadership, I guess, because of my experience as an individual contributor and what leader did I want to have. The vast majority of people who have, in leadership have the thought at some point that they think they can probably do it a little bit better than the people that are leading them. And so it sounds like a kind of a crass thought, but I think it's in a lot of us. And I think early on, I had that thought sometimes. I would have done things differently, or I would have tried different ways of doing things. And then I think is kind of the foundation of how I develop that philosophy of how do I want to be treated as an employee or as an individual contributor, right? Or as a more junior manager, right? How did I want managers above me to treat me? In every step that I've kind of gone, I've just continued to think about how do I want my experience to be? Therefore, I want to reflect that back downward, or laterally or sideways.
Okay, that's very interesting, because I think the first thing that you learn when you're starting on your leadership path is to actually understand how you are and how things about yourself. And I think that's the first step. And I guess that's what you're referring to as well in this description.
Absolutely. And what you are changes over time. You have to constantly keep reevaluating who you are and what you value and what you believe in. And I think you kind of put words in my mouth, but they're the exact words I would want to say, which is knowing yourself is really the key to forming a philosophy or, of leadership, and just reflecting on that over the years. And, like a sculptor that chips away at, a little bit of rock at a time, you continue to form yourself over time. And so I've kind of gone down that same path, right? As I developed as a manager, as a junior leader, and then became more and more senior, it was always looking what's right above me. What could I learn from them? And, what would work for me? What was I? What was I made of? What did I care about? And experiment.
That sounds like a lot of decision making. Gonna lie, and I think that's a big part of being a leader as well. And I'm wondering, what is your decision making process when you're facing some, strategic and hard choices?
I tend to favor trying to make the decision long in advance, like far in advance of when I actually have to make the decision, right? I don't want to like rush to any decision, and I tend to prefer an organic answer to any question or problem. I don't want an answer or a solution that, let's say, feels wrong. I'm one of those people that brings feelings into it in addition to data. And so I have spent a lot of time mapping out what, the different paths that things could go down, before I'm in the situation, right? It's almost like a peacetime, wartime kind of problem. Like you make decisions about how you're going to handle wartime, let's say, during peacetime, right? And so spending time far ahead of, thinking what's important to me on a given topic, be it technical, be it architectural, be it people management, be it organizational. I don't want to the moment that I have to make the decision to be the first time I've thought about how do I want to solve this problem. I want to be more purposeful about it. So I spend a lot of time thinking about, how do I, if this happens, how do I do it? Or how do I want to solve it? And when this happens, what's my response going to be? And then it's just playing that out, right? You play that out, much more calmly when you've kind of already made the decision ahead of time.
Yeah, absolutely, and we have foundations for that. Absolutely. Yeah. But do you think you're able to foresee a good proportion of the decisions that you have to take in the future?
I mean, I think yes. I think, and that's, you're only limited by your own ability to imagine those scenarios too. So if you spend more time imagining scenarios, the more likely it is that it's going to be something that you've imagined. Of course, you can't think of everything. Another thing too is there's credit to experience, right? When I see a problem now with my team, or a challenge or an opportunity, it's like the 5th or 6th or 10th time that I've seen this problem in my career, and I know how I tried to solve it the first few times and how that turned out. So I also have all the data from that. So it's a feedback loop where you're just constantly learning from the last time you saw this problem. At this point, I'm seeing very few new problems, very few new things that I'm oh, this is the first time I've ever experienced this, right? And so, yes, when it was the first time, what can I learn from this after the fact? Try and get the feedback loop going. And then over time, you're just a collection of experiences and you're responding from those. And I don't have many things now, like I said, anymore, where I'm I don't know how I want to solve this. Let me spend some time thinking about it, right? Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate in that regard. So.
Okay. Do you miss that sparkle of unknown?
No, I mean, I think this is what I think at the CTO level, I think this is what I was working toward for all those years, right? It was having the goal. I actually never had the goal of being CTO. My goal was actually to be the VP level, and then once I got there, I set new goals. But yeah, it was always kind of with an eye of moving in that direction, and consistently getting feedback of how my decisions were adding up towards my progress in that direction.
Okay. So you mentioned about challenges and about situations that do not that much surprise you anymore because of the collective experiences that you've had across your career. And I'm wondering if you ever had a situation where you had rapidly scale up your team or operations, and what were the challenges connected to that?
The last couple places, including AirHelp, wefox, I never had to kind of really hit the gas and do something fast. At Yahoo, when I was given the opportunity to lead content engineering, that felt like something needed to accelerate. And my solution there was to focus on the people that I put around me, and find people that I could trust to help me deliver on all these things that I committed to deliver. A multi-year refresh of our content systems at Yahoo was not something that I could deliver on my own. I could do very little of it on my own, even if I were still in, coding or at the whiteboard as an architect or whatever. And so the focus in that moment was around making sure that I had people with me that understood what we were trying to achieve very quickly, and then empowering them to do it. So I had very strong people that I, in some cases, selected. In some cases, they were kind of part of the package deal, and I learned their style very quickly and built around them. So I think, again, like, it's delivering something, like hitting the gas quickly or delivering it slowly. The problems are generally the same. It's just about how quickly do you get trust in people and get clarity around what needs to be done and empower them to go do the work. Like, we needed a bunch of tools built. Well, I needed to have a couple people that were really going to understand the tool work, understand all the technology, understand all the people that they were going to use to do these things, right? We needed work around personalization and, again, trusting in the people that knew that space, giving them opportunity to achieve what we were trying to achieve, giving them the new vision, and then staying out of their way, checking with them regularly, but making sure that they were going in the same direction, but then letting them be the ones to solve the problem of accelerating rapidly, right? I think that's kind of the second part of the answer is, as a leader, especially as a very senior leader, you're not doing most of this work yourself. You're finding the people, and then you're letting them do the work, and then you're celebrating their work publicly, privately and publicly, so that flywheel keeps going, the wheel keeps going down the path, right? So yeah. People, always comes back to people for me. It always comes back to people.
Absolutely. But trust and empowerment, these are two words that I can really hear from what you're saying. And I believe these are holy grails probably of leadership as well. And I'm also wondering about feedback, and what comes with feedback is, and what we want to come with feedback is improvement. And I'm wondering, how do you handle feedback? And here I mean both, like giving and receiving. And how did that shape your leadership style?
I mean, this is something that's definitely matured with time. I think even as recently as 5 or 6 years ago, like, getting strong feedback could be very challenging to me emotionally. And I had to work through that with the help of some very strong leaders that I had at the time. I feel like I'm breaking up. Am I breaking up? That seems okay.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
Feedback in general, I'll talk about giving feedback first. I think, of course, we all give feedback in a leadership scenario, and as team members, I try and give as little of it as possible, to be honest. At least critical feedback. I try and give very positive feedback, because I think underneath that, the foundation of feedback in both directions is like there's a lot of acceptance involved. And again, I go back to people. That means accepting people for who they are. Their styles are very different from mine. I don't expect anybody to be me or to work like me or think like me or act like me. So I feel like for me, if I wanted to be successful, I was just going to always have to default to liking people however they were, accepting them however they were, and therefore they don't need to change because I like them the way they are. So why would I actually give them feedback to change them, right? So I try and save my feedback for when I have a very concrete reason. You went down this path. I think you could have been more successful going down this other path. In this particular scenario, it is never about you as a person or the way you always are, or never, ever. I mean, it's just, there's no room for that. No one receives that well. I've never received feedback well that attempts to kind of pigeonhole me into some way of being. So I just don't really give that. I tend to give very positive feedback and let people magnetize themselves toward that. And then receiving feedback, again, I struggle with that quite a ways into even my leadership career. If you're a strong-willed, determined person, it can be hard to hear, direct criticism, let's say, feedback, critique. Especially when it was about a failure or something that you didn't meet expectations on. And I think, again, I'll give credit to some of the leaders that I had, particularly at Yahoo, who were very seasoned leaders and didn't judge me for that weakness at the time and gave me opportunities to to learn. I remember one of them saying like, the analogy that I remember very clearly is like saying, like, Tim, you might be Superman for all you know, but you've never let a bullet like even attempt to bounce off of you, right? You immediately like kind of push back, fight back the feedback. Mm-hmm. He's like, maybe just like let the bullets try and bounce off you and see what happens. And like, we worked through specific techniques with that leader that I had on how I could identify these situations where I was getting feedback. I'm getting feedback right now. Okay, how do I want to handle it? Listen to it, take it, don't worry about it. Maybe think about it in a day or two. And when I started to employ those techniques, it's really techniques, it became a lot easier for me to receive feedback. And, now, again, I have no problem saying to someone who's giving me feedback, hey, I'm not in a great space right now to receive feedback. Can we talk in 2 days? I will get my head straight and then we can talk about it. And yeah, so because I tend to not want to give feedback, I tend to like positive feedback a lot more than critical feedback as well. And I want to be accepted the way I am, the same way I've accepted other people the way they are. So long answer, but
absolutely. I understand.
I will say one thing, like the key with feedback is like, ask yourself really honestly, do you really need to say this to them? Do you really, is it critical that they know this? It's not critical? Probably don't say it then. Just leave them be. And if it didn't affect anything, like it was just about choices, leave it alone, let them be them, and focus on something bigger like output.
True. I really like that little internal work that you just said. It's worth doing before actually sharing anything with another person. I think it's a very important part of being a leader and sharing feedback. Just making sure that what you want to say actually makes sense and is worth saying it and will bring the result that you're looking for.
And you're not just saying it for your own ego. You're not just saying it to assert yourself. Like, do it really from a place of really caring for the person and helping them improve. And if not, it's not going to help. It's not going to help.
Absolutely. And I think you said a little bit about it, but I'm wondering, like, what management styles you find the most effective, specifically in tech environment, because I think it has its own ways and own rights as well. So I'm wondering what that management styles are and how you adapt them.
Well, I don't think there's a right and wrong management style for tech. I think we all as individual leaders have our own style. And I think in tech, it's far more important to just be true to your own style than it is to have some specific style. I always whittle things down to like, there's two kinds of leaders. There's the bus driver and there's the shepherd, right? The bus driver leads from the front. They really know the route. They're driving people there. They're taking them there. The shepherd is leading from behind. It's working with things with the environment quite a bit more and letting the sheep kind of drive the direction. There's no right or wrong. I think you should know which one you are though, and then be true to it. I think genuineness is far more important with very intelligent, well-educated tech people than one specific style. And I think if you try and force a style, it tends to be something that people see through. And I think my failure early on in my management career, like my very first opportunity that I was given to manage, I failed at it. I talked about this very openly over the years. I did a terrible job because I wasn't being true to myself. I was trying to lead from behind, and it's not really my style. And that's how I really learned that I lead from the front a lot more. And I wasn't being true to myself, and they could tell. And as a result, they didn't respect me. And it was just like, it was a failure. And then the next time I started managing, I did things differently. I tried to focus more on just being true to myself and being okay with myself. So I think the key is, again, going back to like, if I'm treating people like adults, then I should be genuine to myself and let the cards fall where they fall. And that I think works really well with people, treating them like adults and being true to me. I drive from the front. I mean, I need to know the direction. I want to be responsible in many ways for the direction that we're going. And I buy into that, and I expect people to kind of buy in and get on the bus and go with me on that. It doesn't mean that I'm controlling every conversation on the bus. It doesn't mean I'm controlling, where they get on and off the bus. It just means that I know the direction and I'm driving us there.
Absolutely. And may I ask you, how did you discover that you were, a little bit untrue in your first experience? Did that take? Yeah, was that the feedback or?
People started quitting. People started fighting with me. People started standing like just challenging me, and then I handled it again like the wrong way in many regards. Like I didn't have the humility at that stage of my early management career to say, maybe you're right. I think I don't need to do X or Y. I didn't need to say X or Y. We don't need to do it this way or that way. Let me take a step back. I think. So how did I figure it out? I think I got figured out when I got told I didn't get to be a manager of that team anymore, quite simply. And in the time after that, like before I went back to being an individual contributor for a while. And then when I was getting ready to jump back into leadership, I spent a lot of time thinking about what had gone wrong and why did it go wrong and what could I do differently next time. And I think that's when the foundations of my try and solve the problem before you get into the thick of it mentality started. I started to think about, okay, when this starts happening, what am I going to do differently this time? Thinking ahead. Yeah. So really I figured it out just through bombing it, quite simply, and having to deal with the consequences and the shame that I felt at that stage. Luckily it was many years ago, and I learned a lot from it and grew from it, and that's why I don't mind talking about it now.
No, I think it's an amazing story of growth, frankly, and about being honest with yourself. So that's really inspiring, and thank you very much for sharing that.
I still feel really bad about the people that I managed on that team, and a couple of them I've had a chance to talk to over the years and be like, look, here's where I think I went wrong, and I think luckily, it's just work. No one's, it's not life and death, and it's been fine.
Absolutely. And Tim, because the tech world is obviously prone to changes a lot, and I'm wondering, how do you prepare your teams for those unexpected shifts? I mean, cover that a little bit, that you prepare yourself and probably your team ahead of time, but then would you add anything to this in specific?
Well, yeah, I would actually, you said a word that I think caught my ear. It was unexpected. Like there shouldn't be unexpected shifts. You should be aware of what's happening in the industry. And the minute you see new things, start thinking about how you could potentially start to gravitate in those different directions. There's also a piece that I feel really strongly about. It's not something that I've said much in the last couple of years, but there was a phase kind of in my career where I very regularly reminded people, as a software engineer myself, as a developer myself, reminding them no matter how much heart and time you put into this thing that you're building right now, the chances are incredibly high that it's going to be rewritten and shut down within 5 years at most. This is not, so we're not building the Hoover Dam. We're not building, the Golden Gate Bridge. We're not building the Eiffel Tower that's meant to stand for hundreds of years. These are things that are meant to last 5 to 7 years. So don't be precious about it. Do the good enough for what the customer or the internal stakeholder is looking for, and move on to the next thing. So I think put yourself in a mindset first and foremost that the shifts are okay. The shifts should happen, and you should be excited about the fact that you're going to get to move from one thing to the next. And then the second thing would be don't have there shouldn't be any unexpected shifts. There should be expected shifts. We should see things and start thinking about how we can intentionally shift ourselves in those directions over the years as those things develop, right? Again, thinking about things ahead of time instead of just waiting until you get smacked in the face with something and then going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do about it? If you focus a little on just trying to stay ahead of things in all aspects of leadership, it becomes quite a bit easier when things do change or when problems do happen.
Okay. And when it comes to innovation and leadership, because that, innovation is a bit of a change as well. How do you balance the need for strong leadership and fostering an innovation and like open culture for sharing ideas in your teams?
I mean, I don't think those two are mutually exclusive. I think innovation and open culture like requires strong leadership too. But like making an open culture is the leadership that you provide, right? Like opening up opportunities for people to experiment. That's a leadership action, right? So at AirHelp, for example, I didn't create this. I inherited it, and I feel like we've enhanced it a little bit this year. We have a thing called engineering days, where one day a month, everyone in and engineering and data get a day to themselves to like self-drive their own development about topics that they're interested in, be it some other language or AI or anything like that. Now, the cool thing that the leadership has done this year is that we made a list of a few topics. And we said, you're welcome to choose your own path, your own learning path. But here's some things we also really want this organization to know about. Here's some topics or some specific challenges. And if you work on that on your engineering day, your one day, then once a quarter we'll give an award out to whoever did kind of the best exploration of one of those new topics. And we've incentivized those who want the guidance to go down that path, and those who still want to self-drive, they're welcome to self-drive as well. So I think, again, not thinking that I'm going to have all the answers. I have a lot of viewpoints on what we could do, but democratizing the innovation. And then what we've done is we've got enough people who are now starting to know about these, like, for example, LLMs and generative AI, that it's now starting to seep into our projects itself, right? So this year we have several projects where we're actually implementing, we're close to being in production even on a couple of these, where our actual processes, our claims process and our contacts process and things like that, will have AI integration with them. And I think a lot of that comes from just getting people comfortable with it. And for us, that means we've given them the chance to kind of drive themselves there.
Okay.
To me, that's leadership. I mean, to me, it's not, the leadership there is knowing, like, I don't know the answers to how we're going to get there. Let's let them figure it out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. I was about to ask you about integrating new technologies at AirHelp, but I think you covered it a little bit. But would you elaborate on the criteria that you use to integrate such new enhancements?
Well, first off, I kind of have a strong like anti-fad streak. I don't like whatever the fad of the year is. So I still tend to think there's actually a lot greater value in like traditional like machine learned AI than in some of the initial use cases we were hearing about for generative AI. But as we continue to explore like problems, focus on the problem that we're trying to solve and not starting with a solution in mind. For example, we have some processes in our claims processing system where we have rules-based approaches to like reading emails that are sent to an automated inbox, for example, and determining certain data out of those emails. And we've had a rules-based approach. It's worked fine for years. Whereas a lot of people are talking about generative AI from terms of like, chat and, knowledge bases and things like that. We're using it. We kind of backed into the idea of using generative AI or using LLM, to enhance that rules-based approach that we have to reading these emails. In addition to using the rules-based approach, we're also, let's throw that same email content at an LLM and ask it questions about what it thinks is going on in this email, for example. It's information that comes from an airline, for example, right? Before we would have had to keep all these random templates for the different email forms that different airlines would send us. And now we're letting the LLMs do more of the work. So I think the criteria to answer your question is not starting with the solution in mind, continuing to focus on the priorities that we set with our business, but then using those priorities as a means of looking for like, what is the best solution? Are there AI-based solutions or other innovative solutions that we can find to solve this problem, right? And not replace things, but maybe enhance things.
Absolutely. Sounds reasonable. And Tim, because you covered, I was about to ask you about the technologies that you have implemented to boost operational efficiency, but I think you you covered it as well. So unless you'd like to elaborate on that more, okay. Then I have another question.
I could talk forever about it. I could talk forever about like some of the advancements that we did at Yahoo and how they changed my viewpoint of what can be done with technology. I mean, but they're kind of obvious things, right? I think, I think the thing I'll just say this quickly about my time at Yahoo, which I was very fortunate to kind of luck into being at Yahoo. I was at AOL and we merged with Yahoo, and I was able to find a path into the more traditional Yahoo environment. And the thing that was the advancement that I saw there is not like it wasn't an invention. It was more of a circumstance. The scale, the beauty of doing something for, let's say, 1 million people a day versus doing something for 1 billion people a day, right? If you're writing an endpoint or making an API or a service that makes a prediction 5 billion times per day, is designed and architected very differently than something where you need 5 million recommendations a day, for example. And so I think that's really probably been the biggest, far more than AI itself, and the machine learning and all the things we did there. The scale is, I think, the biggest thing that changed my brain around leading. And it really kind of made you have to kind of go back to the very beginning and change the way you organize yourself and the way you organize your team and organize your thought process and the whole architecture for developing software or services changes. So that's the biggest influence, the scale.
Okay. Maybe it's a shallow analogy, but I think it's a little bit like as it is with cooking. It's a huge difference if you cook for a big amount of people and if you're cooking just for 2 people, for instance, right?
Right. I mean, the way you buy is different. The way you organize your kitchen is different. The way you organize your schedule, your time, everything's different. And I had to learn that kind of in the fire. I got thrown into it when all of a sudden I had access to this. I was leading teams that had not just access to this scale, they were already serving customers at that scale. And I had to realize that a lot of what I knew, I had to go back and relearn.
Okay. And Tim, are there any books, movies, podcasts, apart from the disruption talks, that you would recommend to aspiring leaders in tech?
I'm going to give the answer you probably don't want, but no, they're actually I personally, if you're asking me, I don't learn that way. I don't learn from reading a book. I have many colleagues and peers over the year and people on my team now who are really into books. The only book that's really had a lasting impact on me is Radical Candor, but only because I felt like it validated the way I was already operating. And so I've kind of marked it as an important book in my mind. I didn't learn to lead that way. I learned to lead by watching the people leading around me and the people leading right above me and far above me, and reflecting on it in relation to myself. And that's, I think, something that for some people that will work more than formative education. I think that's my sorry non-answer to that question. I would say if you're a person, then I couldn't even point you at books. I don't know. There's a couple that have been really good. There's one called Never Split the Difference that I really like. It's about negotiating, about never giving, don't compromise too early, that kind of thing. And having principles and standing on your principles. And that one was good as well. But again, I already felt like I was a principle-driven leader. So it was a reflection of something that I already believed in.
Okay. And so I just have one last question, Tim. So let's say that you could have a magic wand and you could provide education to all 13 years old on one specific topic. What do you think that topic would be?
So I could wave a magic wand and every 13-year-old on the planet, I could give them this lesson. Yeah. I would it wouldn't be a technical lesson. It would be more of a life skill, and the life skill of like, just slow down, like take a little longer. Don't be in such a hurry to reach what your parents reached, or what you see other people reaching, and enjoy the ride a little bit more. And I say this as an American from a culture of like overwork, right? And I myself am a recovering overworker, luckily long past that part of my life. But I would tell every 13-year-old to be patient. And if you're, there's kind of a catchphrase that I coined, and I've said it many times to people, individual contributors and managers that I've led. If you think you're ready for something now, you're still going to be ready for it later. So why not take the time and get some more experience, and then you'll still be ready. In fact, you'll be even more ready. You'll might be more confident in your readiness. And I think you'll be, what you want to be comfortable whenever you take a next big step. You want to step into a place where you're like, okay, I'm ready for this. So I would say maybe ride the back of the wave a little bit more, as far as like your own pushing yourself. Take your time, slow down, watch a little more, work on yourself a little bit more, listen a little bit more. Those good things are still going to be there for you. It's just, I think you'll be happier when you get to them. When you get to those points, you're sure that you're ready for them.
Okay. So. Thank you very much for that beautiful lesson. And thank you very much, Tim, for today's conversation. It was an honor to host you. And, well, speak soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.